The sport of mixed martial arts is in a terrible place right now, despite the UFC being as popular as it's ever been. Okay, so we're going to get right into it. We have yet another UFC competitor that has been announced, the Global Fight League. And so that's what we're going to get into today. So stick around to hear my thoughts on UFC challengers, because we're going to be talking about a lot of different promotions right now. I'm Wyatt, and this is Fight Society. Before we get into the video, please make sure to like, subscribe, drop a comment down below, all that good YouTube stuff. It really helps me out a lot. If you want to support the channel further and you want access to bonus content, become a channel member. There's a link in the video description down below, or you can click the join button on our channel homepage. Thank you very much. Back to the video. Okay, so we have yet another UFC challenger. Okay, and it's interesting that the Global Fight League announced their organization launch for this year. It's interesting that they did this because I was just planning a video remembering the WFL that Ariel Helwani announced that he was a part of or involved with like 3 years ago. So I find it super interesting that this GFL league made this announcement, because it was originally the World Fight League. It was WFL. And, you know, we're about to come up on a month-long break of UFC. And so I was sitting here like, okay, I got to get creative with the content, you know, the vibes. And I was like, oh yeah, what happened to that WFL thing that Ariel posted all about like 3 years ago? And so I was starting to plan the video out and all of that. And then a couple days go by and I see that this same guy, Darren Owen, went on Ariel Helwani's show today to announce his new promotion is launching in spring of 2025. I think it's in April. So they ended up changing the name from WFL to GFL. It went from World Fight League to Global Fight League. Look, guys, I know this is another UFC challenger that not a lot of people are going to believe in, but it is a big story, at least in the sport of mixed martial arts. So we're going to get into it. We also have some issues with PFL. We have Patchy Mix and Patricio Pitbull both want out of their contracts. So we're going to cover that today as well. So we'll go back to the beginning. Very first, almost 3 years to the day was the first time I heard about this World Fight League. And it says Darren Owen is crisscrossing the country to pitch owners on his new vision, or his vision for a new MMA industry, as the league-based WFL readies for a February 5th, 2023 debut. Now, as we see right here, it ended up getting pushed back because they're 2 years, because they're launching in 2025. But Owen, a former WSOF executive, for those of you that don't know WSOF, that was the World Series of Fighting, actually got bought out and eventually became the PFL. It was the same infrastructure. Justin Gaethje was a WSOF champion. And yeah, so that's who he is. And it says, I believe you're going to see it work. Keep in mind, this is Team MMA like the IFL did back in the day. Owen, a former World Series of Fighting executive, is betting fans will get behind Team MMA despite historical evidence that the opposite is true. Oh, geez, that's a red flag. I believe you're going to see it work, Owen said on Wednesday's edition of the MMA Hour. We're not changing the sport. The sport is the sport. It's two athletes getting inside the cage and competing against each other. That part, I think, is all that really matters. Whether they're competing for a piece of gold being strapped around their waist after it is fairly irrelevant. That's kind of the competition, but it's the competition that really matters. It's what happens when these two alpha males go at it, and who's the better individual that night. That's what people want to watch. Now, here we have a little bit more of a fleshed out explanation of the Global Fight League. It was originally WFL, like I mentioned. So it's a team-based organization. On Ariel Helwani's show, it said that they had signed like hundreds of fighters at this point. I doubt that they're exclusive contracts. I doubt, unless these people have an insane amount of funding like the PFL has from Saudi Arabia, then I really super doubt that these are exclusive contracts and that these guys can go fight for like Karate Combat or go fight Jake Paul. But it says top 50 most followed fighters who have signed with GFL. You have Tyron Woodley. He's going to be making his return to MMA. You have Fabricio Verdum, Anthony Pettis, Alexei Oleinik, Junior Dos Santos, Luke Rockhold, Alex Gustafsson, Vanderlei Silva. Let's see who else we got. Kevin Lee, Frank Mir, yeesh. Andre Arlovsky, Ilir Latifi, some really old guys in here. Benson Henderson, Jeremy Stevens, Robelis Despain, Phil Hawes, guys that just got cut. Greg Hardy, Andre Sukumtat, Andre Harrison, Sidney Outlaw. Yeah, like some young guys, but yeesh. Some of these guys, Frank Mir is like 50, right? Here is their scoring system right here. This says every fight counts. Every fight has 4 points available. 4 points for a finish win, 3 points for a decision win, 2 points for a draw, 1 for a decision loss, and 0 points for a finish loss. Okay. And then they have this road to the championship. The journey begins at the GFL draft, January 24, 2025. And so you have the regular season. It looks like they have 6 cities that they do it in. And then you have the semifinals and finals. It says it starts April 2025 with team versus team matchups, which kind of makes me think that they're going to do like the entire card is this team versus this team. So we've seen this before. This looks like it's not going to work at all, to be honest. I'll watch it. I'll at least cover it for my channel, but this doesn't seem like it's going to work at all, just in my opinion. We move on from there to, we have Ariel Helwani interviewing Darren Owen, who was the WFL head, and now here he is with Global Fight League, same organization. Someone up here makes a pretty funny comment, Fire Festival meets MMA.
What is the Global Fight League?
So we're launching 6 global teams, 4 different continents, and we're launching our proof of concept season starting in April. We have multiple venues booked in multiple different cities around the world. We're embracing our flexibility to begin with and doing that 50-50 revenue share, the team versus team, proof of concept season, and it's finally lined up. We have 300 fighters signed as of right now. Our draft is
300 fighters is quite a bit. That's actually crazy.
January 24th. On those 6 teams, there's 20 athletes per each roster, so we'll sign 120 of the actual fighters that have signed, and then we'll get underway with events in April.
Objectively, as a fan of the sport, I really, really appreciate that there's more places for fighters to sign. We lost a place for fighters to go when Bellator sold to PFL because they ended up becoming one organization. And then we also see One Championship. Their MMA scene has almost completely burned out. It's mostly a Muay Thai, grappling, and kickboxing organization these days. There's just not many places for MMA fighters to go unless it's the UFC or a regional promotion like a Cage Warriors or any of like LFA, Cage Fury FC. There's ones like that. But as far as MMA goes, major organizations, we're coming up on one being just the UFC, because I think the PFL is gone in 5 years. I think the PFL closes shop by like 2030. On paper, this seems good. I just don't know if the team thing is going to stick because it hasn't worked in the past. And this really just brings me to like this greater point of MMA is in a very, very fragile spot right now. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we're just headed to like the NFL, NBA iteration of MMA, where it's basically just the UFC. And then you have just like whatever these feeder organizations, such as like minor league baseball would have. But the reason I'm worried about this is because the PFL, Bellator, their merger has been an absolute nightmare. Here you have Bellator bantamweight champion, arguably a top 5 bantamweight in the world for any organization, Patchy Mix, saying, my manager told me to hold off, but I haven't heard anything from PFL or Don Davis. If you're not going to have me fight, then just please release me from my contract. This is not what I want, but if I'm not important to the company being a multiple-time champ, then let me go respectfully. We also had Patricio Pitbull saying the same thing, and there was a bunch of Bellator fighters that are not happy since joining the PFL, since that merger. A lot of them spoke up. I did a video about it about a week ago. Patchy Mix, Patricio Pitbull, Corey Anderson, and the only one out of those people that complained that actually got a fight was Corey Anderson. And it's Corey Anderson actually going up to heavyweight for a trilogy fight, because it was supposed to be Nemkov against somebody else for the heavyweight belt. And then Corey Anderson is now going to go up to heavyweight for a trilogy fight against Nemkov. So 2 205ers fighting for a heavyweight title. It just doesn't make sense. The PFL is a burning ship. We've talked about this. It's a sinking ship. 5 years or less until their roster gets absorbed by the UFC or they just fold completely. On top of that, you also have One Championship, whose MMA scene has mostly died off, but somebody who's in the UFC now who fought for them is Renner de Ridder, who is now a UFC middleweight. He got a win over Gerald Meerschaert in his first UFC fight, and now he's fighting Kevin Holland on January 18th at UFC 311 in Los Angeles. But here he is. Tell Renner de Ridder to respond to my Instagram DM. I'm trying to do an interview with him while he's in LA, all right? But here's Renner de Ridder. He's even saying or warning fighters not to sign with One Championship.
Yeah, it's been a bad couple of years. The stress I've been put through, the stress my family's been put through, to even just get fights, it hasn't been nice. And this is something. It's hard for me to talk bad because I've had a couple good years at one as well. In the beginning, they treated me well, but over the last couple of years, it's been really bad. And this is something I feel I have to do for other fighters. If you think of signing with one championship, don't. It's that simple. You should not. There's nothing there. There's no fights. You're just wrong if you do this. If you sign there, this is a bad mistake.
And there's Renner to Ritter talking about it too. So we're just at this point where the UFC growing and growing and growing and getting bigger, but there's less opportunity for fighters. The UFC has an incredibly bloated roster. It's like 700 fighters. And even then, there isn't really a place for everybody. Like, not every guy is getting 3 fights a year or making enough money to fight full time. They have to have other jobs. The same goes for these guys. Now we have less and less organizations that will house fighters. And it's just because of this dirty fight game. These promoters are just trying to make money, screw the fighters. That's what you guys, that's like the dirty, rotten secret about fight promotion, is that it's other people making money off of the fighters' back. Most people see it. You guys see it. You watch this channel. I call it out enough with Dana and the fighters being underpaid, all this different stuff. But this is the fight game, and it's not going to become boxing. I know it's not going to become that. We're past that, okay? But MMA needs more places for fighters to fight. Thanks for watching this video. Please make sure to like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. It really helps me out a lot. If you want access to bonus content, become a channel member today by clicking the join button on our channel homepage or the link down below this video. If you're interested in some non-MMA content from me, go check out my podcast, What's Up Bro, with Wyatt and Bo, in the link down below. Go watch this suggested video, and I'll see you next time.